on consent and you only get 3 minutes, so that's not enough time to address every item and make sure that you can even get information on them. So it's sad when they do that. But on the board of directors meeting, they're going to have policy advisory committee actions, meetings and events attended on behalf of SANDAG, the 2024 FTA Title VI program update, proposed fiscal year 2025 program budget amendment, powering climate and infrastructure career challenges, grant award, proposed fiscal year 2025 program budget amendment, regional early action planning grants of 2021. It's the REAP 2.0. And they will then go to reports, and they'll have a report on the Office of Independent Performance Auditor, the fiscal year 2024 annual investigations report, and then a performance audit on SANDAG's contracts, invoicing, and payment process. Then they will go to management responses and corrective action plan. And then they'll be having a closed session, and this one's pretty interesting. After the January 22nd floods, there is litigation that is coming forward. So they're going to be briefed on 5 claims filed on behalf of 722 claimants and also another 555 with 2 different law firms that are alleging damage to real and personal property caused by the flooding in January. So that will be interesting. That's happening in also the city and other areas, the county as well, so that people can recoup what they've lost due to the negligence of these boards, commissions and committees for not, and councils for not doing their job and making sure to keep up with the infrastructure. It had been about a decade since they actually kept up with taking care of it. So a lot of people have lost their homes, and they're still trying to pick up the pieces of what's happened. And it's just sad to see that they have had to be dealing with that. There's a couple of people who have even lost their lives due to the flooding. But it was interesting just coming out here. There's a security guard just over my shoulder to the right behind me, which would be your left. And she came up and was asking what we were doing, which is interesting because, it's like, this is not only a First Amendment audit, but, I'm going to be attending the meeting, but it's funny when they send out security. We're pretty used to that just because of, now some other guy came out. Usually when we're covering the border, that will happen. They just want to silence the people, which is interesting. Always want to know what you're doing, but we'll be attending the meeting, and we're just doing a report outside as well. So it'll be an interesting day. We're going to also, there's going to be some other lives that will be coming to you today, so stay tuned. But this should be an interesting meeting. This is a big board. It's the San Diego Association of Governments. That's what SANDAG is, and so they have representatives from every city, the unincorporated area, the native areas, as well as the transportation agencies like Caltrans and MTS and NCTD, and then also some from the airport authority and different people like that. So it's interesting to see them all come together and do these meetings. They're pushing a lot of stuff that has to do with climate change. A lot of the time, the things in this agenda aren't necessarily that today, but yesterday at the, it was a working committee. I can't remember, I'm sorry, it's just off the top of my head. I can't think of the name of it, but they were transportation. They were dealing with that, and so they're bringing in a lot of things that have to do with their climate change agenda or their climate action plan. And I'm finding a lot of people are wanting to, not a whole lot, but there's several people who want to repeal these actions, want them to stop doing the climate action plan, and that should happen, because what they're doing is using a United Nations Agenda 21, their sustainability goals. And it's interesting because this has been in the works for over a decade. And, you know, it comes down from the state as well. As a charter county and city here, you know, they were able to step out of having to follow along with what the government is laying down on the pipe. But the problem is that in order to get money and funding, you have to play the game of the state and federal government, and that's why they do it. So, you know, many times they're not willing to go against the state. I tried during the days of COVID to get them to not implement the things of like closing down businesses, or, you know, forcing people to get vaccinated or wear a mask, whatever it was. But in order to get the money for COVID, you have to play the game, shut the county down, even when there wasn't any cases of COVID. And then it was 3 weeks later that they finally had one case after locking us down. So it's interesting to see how effective that was. But, you know, so most of these cities aren't willing, and nor is the county willing to go against the state. Again, it's because of the money that they get and the perks that come from, you know, abiding by the, you know, rules and regulations that they have set. So they act like they don't have a choice, when in reality they do. But it's interesting to see, you know, a lot of it will be the Democrats that are pushing the climate change agenda. You know, even with the storm that happened in the over 1,300 people that are going to be filing this lawsuit, and going into litigation with these boards. You know, they were saying it's like a once-in-a-lifetime storm. It fits exactly into their climate agenda, which I call their climate god, because they're willing to sacrifice anything to it. So this guy's still sitting here watching. It's kind of funny. But when they do that, you know, like it doesn't help, because what happened with the storm, there was cloud seeding that was taking place. So they're doing weather modification that was causing these storms, and they do it in the guise of saying that, you know, there's a drought and we need more water. But anytime they've done it, there were times they had done it in San Diego decades before, and there was massive flooding. People lost their lives. And so they don't really want to talk about it. There's a lot of states that will go ahead and admit that this is happening and put forward legislation and different things to make sure that this doesn't take place, that cloud seeding or weather modification doesn't take place. But when you try and get people who are so hell-bent on, you know, worshiping this climate god, they won't go against that. So they'll say that, see, this is global warming, and instead of people admitting to it, and you could potentially save lives and all the destruction, people from the destruction that will take place in these storms, if you do admit and acknowledge that it's happening and do something to stop it. But again, when it fits into the climate agenda, they're not willing to do that, because they can use that as an excuse as to why it happens. So, you know, and all while they're not keeping up the infrastructure, and, you know, they act like it's, you know, something that obviously it's been happening for over a decade. But the problem is that they haven't done it since. So it's nobody along the line has really started to, had taken care of it. And so the hope is that they are starting to do that, because there was money that was taken from those funds and put into other things. And that's what they'll do. They'll move money around, and then you don't have money for what you need to take care of. So it's going to be an interesting day. We had the security guy finally leave. But I hope you guys have a great Friday. Again, stay tuned. We'll be coming to you live from the 2 meetings that are coming forward here, and then some other things this afternoon. So happy Friday the 13th.
I'm doing overlays now. You don't have to walk away
Oh,
anymore.
I wasn't sure.
And then I throw this back on.
Yeah.